Jane Forwish Bailey, born August 16th, 1957. Born and raised in Stafford County, grew up in Argyle Heights. My mother still lives in the home I was born in. I wanted to think more about my early childhood in Argyle Heights and what it meant to be a child growing up in Stafford in the early 60s. Your range was pretty much as far as your feet or your bicycle could carry you. So back then we had a bunch of kids in the neighborhood. Our range was the Rappahannock River. We'd go to Rumford Farm, where the Kindles had a farm there. Many days spent riding horses, playing in the gravel pit, when that was an active gravel pit with dump trucks. So the landscape there was always changing. There were little ponds there that we could ice skate on in the winter, and in the summer we could swim. And we could play in their hay barn and built hay forts. To the east, our range was Henderson's store, which is still there right on the railroad tracks, and we could walk the railroad tracks to Henderson's to usually get ice cream there. A little further down was Falls Run. Along Falls Run, Dad used to always take us hiking there to the Indian Bowl. There's a really neat Indian Bowl carved out of the rock cliff there, and it's still there to this day, where the Indians would do some type of washing of whatever, their food or their clothing or whatever they used it for. They had running water. Coming back on Route 3 right below Argyle Heights, there was a little store called Murphy's. Mr. Murphy's store, tiny little store, had penny candy. So we spent hours as children collecting bottles along the ditches and taking it in and turning it in for penny candy. And that was a real treat. One of my earliest memories was Clover Tavern burning, which was right in front of where the Walmart is now. Huge fire. It was an old wooden tavern that was on Route 3, and Dad was so concerned that the fire may come up the woods to our house, so we had the hoses ready. But that was a neat structure there. Going north, our boundary as children was Carroll Lake, which was part of Argyle Heights. There was all woods back beyond that, so we would play in those woods. Carroll Lake was a fun place to go. We didn't really swim there that much, did a lot of ice skating. And it seemed like every year you could just about ice skate on the small pond up there or the big lake. Always we ice skated on the pond. If it was really cold, we'd ice skate on the lake. My sister Sarah did fall in once, but thank goodness my father always was safety cautious and brought a ski rope. So he saved her with the ski rope, and we had to pull her in, and he would not let her get in his demonstrator car, so we threw her in the trunk of the car, drove her home. But she was fine. She survived. As far as going the other direction as a child, or as far as we'd ever want to go on our bicycles, there was a little store on Ferry Road called Jack's Market. You could get 10-cent giant baby Ruths, and it was worth riding your bike to go get that. So anyway, that was our boundary as children. We had a lot of children in the neighborhood, and we just rode bikes and played, and didn't have to check in too much, but could go as far as our feet would take us, like I said earlier. Also great memories growing up on Potomac Creek. Dad had an aunt who owned Wallpoint Marina, which Mom had just alluded to, and so we boated every weekend. So a lot of great memories learning to water ski and fishing and just canoeing. I remember in high school we'd go down to Belle Plains. My boyfriend had a friend who had a boat, and we'd go right after school in the summer and jump in there, and our goal was to water ski and then land on the pier at Belle Plains in our water skis and jump up so we wouldn't get wet. So I know a couple of the guys had pretty good scratches on their side, but nobody got seriously hurt. But that was fun. Other childhood memories, making tree forts, like I said, doing the biking, sleigh riding. We used to sleigh ride down Federal Drive onto Route 3, and if you saw a car coming trying to come up Federal Drive, you just had to veer off to the right or left really quick. I don't even think people would think about that now. Going to the dog mart was a big deal when we were very young. Mom had some old foxhorns, so we were always entered in the foxhorn contest. We always had a dog we could enter in the dog contest. But to me, the favorite part of the dog mart was I could buy a slingshot. because we had a lot of kids in the neighborhood. A lot of them were older, so I had to defend myself. So I was a little tomboy, and I always get that slingshot and climb up a tree, and I could shoot acorns at the people I wanted to shoot to. So that was a highlight. Archie Newton was a older gentleman in Stafford, and he would have an old truck, and he and his wife would just drive through the neighborhoods, and they knew, I guess, who to sell their wares to, vegetables and hard-shell crabs. So when Archie would come, that was a big deal too. And Mom and Dad would always try and dicker with him a little bit, but they'd have beans and crabs and fish roe. Oh gosh, quarts of fish roe to die for. Archie Newton, that was a real highlight when we saw his truck driving around the neighborhood. Saturday going downtown Fredericksburg was a real big deal as a kid. Everything was downtown. So every Saturday you go shopping downtown Fredericksburg. The Stafford James Monroe football game was a big deal from early memories on up. I mean, everybody go to Maury Stadium, and that was a real big rivalry. I vividly remember that. When I was in high school at Stafford, football was a really big deal because there wasn't that much else to do. Very few places to go, but the Pizza Hut on Route 1 was open. So you go to the football game, and then you would hightail it in my 67 Camaro down Route 1 to get to the Pizza Hut to get the best seat in the place. And they're right at the door when you walked into the Pizza Hut. There was a big table that could seat maybe 8 people. So we'd always try to get that, and then you just stay there for the night. And back then too, the drinking age was 18. So when we were seniors, you could have beer there. So that was kind of fun. Trying to think of any other. I remember working at the Sheraton in high school, and one time I remember getting to the Sheraton, which is at Central Park, in 11 minutes from home, and because you could drive straight through town. So that was kind of neat. You know, it was just straight through town. If you caught every stoplight just right, you know, you could make it 11 minutes. But that showed you how little traffic there was. And in summary, I think growing up in Stafford just made me really appreciate the history of the area. So many famous presidents and people, and George Washington, of course, that were here. And I always try to visualize growing up as a kid, and even now, what it must have looked like then. And also, I have a real love of nature, growing up on the water, and then growing up playing in the woods. And then I really have an interest in genealogy and our family history. And I think, again, just because Stafford just has so many generations that are from here. So anyway, it's been a real treat growing up here. And also, this area is just so convenient to the ocean and the mountains, and, of course, to Richmond and Washington. So a primo place, depending on what you were going after.